We were standing in her kitchen on a Tuesday evening, dishes between us, water running, the kind of ordinary moment that makes you feel safe. And without looking at me, my fiancé said, "I don't think we should act engaged in public anymore." That was it. No argument, no build-up, no explanation. I answered, "Understood." I didn't ask why. I didn't push back. I didn't correct her. She paused, clearly expecting something else. A question. A protest. A sign that I would fight for the title she was slowly trying to erase. When none of that came, she just nodded and went back to drying dishes. That was the moment everything cracked, even though nothing technically broke yet. I'm 29 years old, and until 2 weeks before that night, I was planning a wedding for next spring. We had been engaged for 8 months, together for 3 years before that. Our families adored each other. Our friends joked that we were relationship goals. On paper, we were perfect. But engaged people who want to be engaged don't ask to hide it. They don't feel burdened by expectations. They feel excited by them. That weekend, we went to her parents' house for our usual family dinner. Nothing fancy, roast chicken, familiar faces, comfortable routines. I noticed she was relaxed, talkative, completely normal. She didn't mention the conversation from Tuesday at all. Then her mother stopped mid-sentence and looked at my hand. "Where's your ring?" she asked. The table went silent. I answered calmly, "I had it resized. Picked it up yesterday, but I decided not to wear it anymore." My fiancé's face went pale. She hadn't expected that. She had asked me not to act engaged, but she hadn't thought about what that actually meant. She hadn't considered that when you remove a symbol, people notice. That when you stop pretending, the truth becomes visible. That dinner didn't end our engagement. It exposed the fact that it had already started ending long before. And once the truth is seen in a room full of people, there's no putting it back where it was. I was 29, and for the longest time, I believed I was standing at the edge of the life I'd been working toward. I had a steady career, a routine I liked, and a relationship that everyone around us seemed to admire. My fiancé and I had been together for 3 years before we got engaged. When he proposed, it didn't feel rushed or dramatic. It felt inevitable, like the natural next step after years of building something solid. We met through friends at a small gathering, one of those casual nights that turn into something bigger without you realizing it at first. He was charming in a quiet way, thoughtful, attentive, the kind of man who remembered details and followed through on promises. I liked that he wasn't flashy. I liked that he felt safe. The first year was easy. We spent weekends cooking together, arguing playfully over what movie to watch, planning trips we always said we'd take next year. He integrated into my family seamlessly. My parents adored him. My siblings trusted him. His family welcomed me immediately. His mother used to tell people she couldn't imagine a better match for her son. His father treated me like I was already part of the family. When we got engaged, it felt like confirmation, not just of our love, but of the life we were building together. We didn't rush wedding plans at first. We talked about venues casually, dates hypothetically. We liked the idea of a spring wedding. We liked the idea of doing it right. Looking back now, there were signs I chose to ignore. Subtle shifts I explained away because nothing felt urgent enough to question. The way he sometimes grew quiet when people asked about wedding details. The way he joked about losing his freedom, then laughed it off when I raised an eyebrow. The way he'd say things like, "Everyone expects engaged couples to be perfect," as if that expectation already felt heavy to him. I told myself it was normal. Planning a wedding is stressful. Commitments scare people sometimes. Love isn't supposed to be effortless all the time, but love that's moving forward doesn't ask to move backward. By the time he asked me not to act engaged in public, I had already been ignoring the feeling in my gut for weeks. The feeling that something about our future no longer felt mutual, that I was excited about what was coming, and he was quietly looking for ways to slow it down. I didn't know then how far that distance had already grown. I just knew that the man who once couldn't wait to call me his fiancé now wanted the world to think we were only dating again. And that was the first time I wondered if the life I was planning was only mine. After that Tuesday night, I started noticing things I had trained myself not to see. Not because they were new, but because I finally allowed myself to stop explaining them away. At first, it was small, almost invisible. The way he'd change the subject when someone asked about the wedding. How he'd laugh it off and say, "We're taking our time," instead of, "We're excited." The way his phone suddenly felt like a private object, always angled slightly away from me, always face down on the table. None of it was dramatic enough to accuse him of anything, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't unsee. He began going out more after work, happy hours with coworkers, networking events that seemed to pop up last minute. He always had a reason, always a justification that sounded reasonable on its own. I didn't want to be the fiancé who questioned everything, so I nodded and said, "Have fun," even when something in my chest tightened. What changed most wasn't his schedule, it was his energy. He stopped talking about the future unless I brought it up first. Wedding plans became something I had to initiate instead of something we shared. When I mentioned venues or dates, he responded with vague enthusiasm. "Yeah, that could work. We'll figure it out." There's no rush. There was always no rush. His family didn't push either, which should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like avoidance. His parents were kind to me as always, but the tone shifted. Less excitement, more careful questions. His mother once asked, "Are you two doing okay?" in a way that suggested she already knew the answer might not be simple. Friends noticed it too, even if they didn't say it outright. At group dinners, he stopped introducing me as his fiancé. Sometimes he'd say my name and leave it at that. Other times he'd say, "my partner," like the word fiancé had suddenly become too heavy to carry. I told myself not to read into it, but then came Thursday morning. We were getting ready for work, moving around each other in that familiar rhythm couples develop over time. He mentioned casually, "Don't forget dinner with my parents this weekend." 6 o'clock, right? I asked. "Yeah, and can we just not talk about wedding stuff?" he added, not meeting my eyes. I told them we're still figuring things out. I froze for half a second. "You told them that?" "They were asking too many questions," he said quickly. "I just needed them to back off." "Okay," I replied. Again, he looked at me like he expected more. A challenge, a protest, something emotional enough to justify his discomfort. I gave him nothing. That was when I realized something unsettling. He wasn't afraid of the wedding itself. He was afraid of accountability, of saying yes out loud in a way that couldn't be walked back quietly. And instead of confronting it, he was slowly erasing the engagement one public interaction at a time. I didn't accuse him. I didn't confront him. I did something else. I paid attention. And once I did, I saw the truth forming long before anyone said it out loud. Friday afternoon, I made a decision that surprised even me. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask for reassurance. I didn't beg him to choose me. Instead, I went to a jeweler. It was a small shop I'd passed 100 times before, tucked between a cafe and a dry cleaner. When we got engaged 8 months earlier, I had bought a ring for myself too. Not because I needed it, but because I loved the idea of mutual commitment. Two people choosing each other openly, visibly. My ring was simple, a smooth band, nothing flashy. I wore it every day without thinking. I slid it across the counter. "I need this resized," I told the jeweler. She examined it. "Shouldn't take long, a few hours." "Can you engrave something inside as well?" I asked. "Of course. What would you like it to say?" I thought of Tuesday night, the water running, the folded dish towel, her voice, careful and distant. "I don't think we should act engaged in public anymore." 3 words, I said. She said no. The jeweler nodded without asking questions. I picked the ring up around 5:30. The engraving was clean and precise, hidden where only the wearer would ever see it. I turned it over in my hand for a long moment. Then I didn't put it back on. Saturday came quietly. We drove to her parents' house together like we always did. She chatted easily in the car, laughing about work gossip, pointing out something she'd seen online. I answered when it felt natural, but mostly I listened. She didn't mention Tuesday. She didn't mention the ring. If she noticed my bare hand resting on the steering wheel, she didn't say anything. Her parents' house looked the same as always. Warm lights, familiar smells. Her mother hugged us both at the door. Her father shook my hand and asked about work. Her sister and brother-in-law arrived a few minutes later with their kids, who immediately ran toward me, excited to show me their toys. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Dinner was served family style, dishes passed around the table like they always were. Her mom was mid-sentence, asking her sister about something work-related, when she stopped abruptly. Her eyes were fixed on my left hand as I reached for the salad bowl. "Where's your ring?" she asked. The room went very still. Everyone looked at me, then at my fiancé. "I had it resized," I said calmly. "Picked it up yesterday, but I decided not to wear it anymore." Her face drained of color. "What?" she said. "Why wouldn't you wear it?" "Because she asked me not to act engaged in public anymore," I said, looking directly at her mother, and wearing an engagement ring felt like acting engaged. Her mother's expression shifted slowly, confusion giving way to concern. "She asked you that?" her mother said. "Yes," I replied, "Tuesday evening. She said it was too much pressure, too many expectations, so I respected her wishes." My fiancé stood up suddenly. "Can we talk about this privately?" she asked. "Why?" I said quietly. "You made the request privately, but these are the consequences publicly." Her father set his fork down. "Is this true?" he asked her. She looked around the table, eyes filling with tears, family waiting for an answer. "You're making it sound worse than it is," she said weakly. "I just needed some space." "Space from what?" her sister asked. "From everyone asking about the wedding," she said. "From the pressure to be perfect all the time." "So instead of telling people to stop asking," her mother said slowly, "you told your fiancé to hide the engagement?" She didn't answer. I stood up. "I should probably go," I said. "Thank you for dinner." "Let's just calm down," her father said. "We can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied. "She's made her position clear. If she wants to be married, she knows where to find me. But I'm done pretending everything's fine when it clearly isn't." I walked out, got in my car, drove back to my apartment, the one I'd kept just in case. That night, I understood something fully for the first time. The missing ring wasn't the problem. It was the truth it exposed. I didn't feel dramatic driving away from her parents' house. I felt clear. Clear in a way that settles into your bones and doesn't leave room for second guessing. The apartment I'd kept as a backup suddenly felt like the smartest decision I'd made all year. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and let the silence wrap around me. No tension, no guessing, just space. My phone started buzzing before I even sat down. 14 missed calls, then texts, so many texts. Anger first. Accusations about embarrassing her, about blindsiding her in front of her family. Then apologies layered over confusion. Then desperation. I read every message slowly, carefully, as if I were reading someone else's life. I didn't respond. Around midnight, the intercom buzzed, over and over. "Let me up," her voice cracked through the speaker. "We need to talk." "Not tonight," I said calmly. "Please, I need to explain." "You already explained," I replied. "You don't want to act engaged. Message received." "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. "Then what did you mean?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you got cold feet and didn't know how to say it out loud." Silence. "Can I please just come up?" she whispered. "No," I said. "Go home. We'll talk when you figure out what you actually want." I hung up. She buzzed 4 more times. I didn't answer. Eventually, she left. Sunday morning, her mother called me. I hadn't expected that. "I'm sorry about last night," she said gently. "That was a lot. It wasn't your fault." "I know," I replied, "but I appreciate you saying that." "You handled it better than I would have," she continued. "You just told the truth." "That's all I did," I said. She paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you still want to marry her?" I thought about it longer than I expected. "I want to marry the person I thought she was," I said honestly. "The person who was excited about our future. But that version of her has been gone for a while now. I don't know if she's coming back, or if she was ever really there." Her mother sighed softly. "For what it's worth, I think she loves you, but I don't think she knows what she wants. And that's not fair to you." "No," I agreed. "It's not." When the call ended, I sat there realizing something important. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was just finally refusing to carry confusion that wasn't mine. And that's when my phone buzzed again. This time it was her sister. "Can we talk?" she texted. Something told me this conversation would change everything. I stepped outside onto my balcony before calling her sister back. The air was cool, sharp enough to clear my head. I already knew whatever she was about to say wouldn't be small. People don't reach out like that unless they're carrying something heavy. "Tell me," I said when she picked up. "What's really going on?" She didn't rush. She exhaled first, like she'd been holding this in for a while. "She didn't tell you the full truth about why she asked you to stop acting engaged." My stomach tightened. "Okay." "There's a guy at her work," she continued. "A coworker. He's been flirting with her. Compliments, lunches, texts after hours. Nothing physical, at least that's what she says. But it's been going on for about a month." I closed my eyes. It all lined up too perfectly. "She didn't shut it down," her sister said. "She liked the attention. She felt guilty about it, but she didn't want it to stop either." "So she tried to create a middle ground," I said quietly. "Yes," she replied, "a space where she could enjoy the attention without technically cheating. She didn't want to say she was single, but she didn't want to say she was engaged either." The words landed hard, but they didn't surprise me. The puzzle pieces finally clicked into place. The sudden pressure, the secrecy, the request to erase the engagement publicly while keeping me emotionally on standby. Did she do anything with him? I asked. She says no, her sister said. But she admitted the reason she asked you to stop acting engaged was because he asked if she was single, and she didn't want to say no. I leaned against the railing, the city lights blurring below me. So she wanted to keep her options open. Yes, her sister said. And I told her that was selfish, that it wasn't fair to you, that you deserve someone who didn't hesitate to choose you. What did she say? I asked. She cried, her sister replied, said she made a mistake, said she realized she'd been taking you for granted, said she wanted to fix it. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, does she want to fix it because she truly wants to be with me, or because she got caught and embarrassed? Her sister didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. I honestly don't know, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. That evening, my fiancée showed up at my apartment again. This time, when the intercom buzzed, I let her up. She stood in my doorway looking exhausted, eyes red, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing one of my old hoodies like a shield. I need to tell you something, she said immediately. I already know, I replied. Your sister told me. Her knees almost buckled. She told you about him? Yes. I didn't do anything, she rushed. I swear, nothing physical. You did something worse, I said calmly. You kept the door open. You asked me to hide our engagement so you could explore attention without calling it cheating. I was scared, she said, crying now. I was confused about getting married, and then this guy started flirting and it felt good, and I didn't know how to handle it. So you handled it by asking your fiancé to disappear publicly, I said, by lying to your family, by keeping me in the dark while you tested whether you wanted something else. That's not what I was doing, she whispered. That's exactly what you were doing, I replied. And if I hadn't taken off the ring at dinner, you probably would have kept doing it. She didn't deny it. I think you should go, I said finally. Are we done? She asked, terrified. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I can't marry someone who isn't sure they want to marry me. And you've made that very clear. She left quietly, and when the door closed, I realized the situation had moved past misunderstanding. This wasn't about pressure anymore. It was about choice. And she had already made hers. The next 2 weeks were the hardest part, not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. No big confrontation, no clean resolution, just space filled with unanswered questions and a quiet ache that followed me everywhere. She kept reaching out, not aggressively, not angrily, soft messages, careful words, telling me she was in therapy, telling me she was trying to understand why she'd sabotaged something good, telling me she missed me, telling me she was sorry. I didn't block her, but I didn't engage either. I replied only when I felt it was necessary, short and neutral, confirming I was okay, asking for time, saying I wasn't ready to talk about the future. That limbo was its own kind of torture. Some nights, I lay awake wondering if I was being too harsh, if fear had really driven her actions more than malice, if loving someone meant giving them room to fail and come back better. Other nights, I felt angry at myself for even entertaining those thoughts, for still carrying her emotional weight after she'd already shown me she wasn't sure I wanted to carry mine. The doubt crept in quietly. What if she really hadn't cheated? What if this was just cold feet? What if everyone makes mistakes before marriage? Those questions circled endlessly, wearing me down. That was the lowest point. Not the dinner, not the confrontation, the doubt. The temptation to minimize my own pain so I wouldn't have to grieve what I was losing. Then her mother called again. She asked if I'd be willing to come over for dinner that Saturday. Just me and her parents. No ambush, no pressure. She said they wanted to talk. I almost said no. I didn't owe anyone anything. But something in her voice made me agree. When I arrived, her father opened the door and hugged me longer than usual. He looked tired. Her mother brought coffee and sat across from me on the couch. They didn't defend her. They didn't make excuses. They asked how I was sleeping, if I was eating, if I had support. Then her mother said something that cut through all the noise. Whatever you decide, she said, we won't hold it against you. You've been good to her, and you don't deserve uncertainty at the altar. That was it. That was the moment I hit emotional rock bottom and climbed out at the same time. I realized I wasn't cruel for needing certainty. I wasn't heartless for stepping back. I wasn't overreacting for refusing to marry someone who hesitated to claim me. As I drove home that night, I cried for the first time since everything began. Not loudly, not dramatically, just tears falling as the weight finally lifted. I wasn't grieving the end of the engagement anymore. I was grieving the future I thought we shared. And once I named that, once I let myself feel it fully, I knew the next step wouldn't be about saving something broken. It would be about choosing myself, even if it hurt. The turning point didn't arrive with a dramatic decision. It arrived with a quiet sentence I said to myself while sitting alone in my apartment, staring at the bare spot on my finger where the ring used to be. I can't build a marriage on hesitation. Once that thought settled, everything else fell into place. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel tight. There was sadness, yes, but underneath it was something steadier, clarity. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching people start their day, and realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for an explanation, not for reassurance, not for her to finally choose me out loud. She had already told me what I needed to know, not with one action, but with a pattern. Later that afternoon, her sister texted me again. She wanted to check in, to see how I was holding up. I told her the truth, that I was tired but clear, that I wasn't angry, but I was done negotiating my own worth. She ended things with the coworker, her sister said, told him she was engaged and to never contact her again. She's been going to therapy twice a week. I'm glad she's taking responsibility, I replied, and I meant it. But responsibility after the damage is done doesn't restore trust. It only explains why it broke. That evening, my fiancé sent me a long email, not a text, an email. She didn't ask to come back. She didn't promise change. She owned what she did, fully. She admitted she'd been selfish, that she'd enjoyed the attention, that she'd been scared of commitment and tried to manage her fear by controlling appearances instead of telling the truth. She wrote, "I understand if you can't forgive me. I just needed you to know I see now how deeply I hurt you." I read it slowly, twice. Then I closed my laptop and sat in silence. That was the moment I realized forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. I could forgive her for my own peace, but I could not marry someone who needed to nearly lose me to decide if I was worth choosing. The next day I asked to meet her briefly. Neutral ground, no drama. She handed me the engagement ring without argument. Her hands were shaking. Mine weren't. "This doesn't mean I hate you," I told her quietly. "It means I respect myself." She cried. I didn't. Walking away that afternoon felt different from every other goodbye we'd had. There was no uncertainty attached to it. No what if, just acceptance. The engagement was over. Not because of one mistake, but because of one truth revealed too clearly to ignore. And once I chose myself, the fear disappeared. Once the engagement was officially over, the fallout didn't arrive in waves. It came in ripples. Quiet, unavoidable ripples that reached every corner of the life we'd been building. I moved my things out of his apartment 2 weeks later, not in one dramatic sweep, but in careful trips. A box of clothes, a bag of books, the framed photo from the hallway that showed us smiling on a trip we once called the beginning of forever. He wasn't there when I came. That was intentional. We'd agreed it would be easier that way, and for once, we were right. People started finding out. Friends first, then extended family. Some were shocked. Some said they'd sensed something was off, but didn't know how to say it. A few tried to play mediator, asking if we could work through it since nothing physical had happened. I listened politely and said the same thing every time. I can't marry someone who isn't sure they want to marry me. That sentence ended most conversations quickly. His parents were different. They never pressured me. They never tried to excuse him. His father called once, just to say he respected my decision. His mother sent a care package a few days later, homemade cookies, and a handwritten note telling me she was thinking of me. It was strange, maintaining a connection with the family of the man I'd just walked away from. But it also confirmed something important. The problem had never been me. He struggled more openly after that. I heard through his sister that he was angry, then ashamed, then deeply regretful. He kept replaying that dinner in his head, trying to figure out where things went wrong. He asked why I hadn't fought harder, why I hadn't pushed him to choose me. That part hurt, but it also reinforced the truth. He still didn't understand that love isn't proven by how hard someone begs to be kept. The coworker disappeared from his life quietly. Once the engagement ended and the illusion collapsed, the attention wasn't exciting anymore. It never is, once consequences arrive. The fantasy doesn't survive daylight. Our friends eventually stopped asking for updates. The drama faded. Life kept moving. One afternoon, I opened my dresser drawer and saw the ring with the engraving inside. She said no. It felt accurate in a way that went beyond literal meaning. He had said no to certainty, No to choosing me without hesitation. No to standing fully in the life we were supposed to share. I didn't feel victorious. I felt grounded. The fallout didn't destroy him. It clarified him. And it clarified me, too. I didn't walk away to punish him. I walked away because staying would have punished me. And as the noise finally died down, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. It has been 6 weeks since the dinner where everything finally came into the light, and my life feels unfamiliar in a way that isn't frightening anymore. The engagement is officially over. Not paused, not on hold, over. Saying that out loud still feels strange sometimes, but it no longer feels painful in the sharp, destabilizing way it once did. I moved the rest of my things out of his apartment 2 weeks ago. The last box was lighter than I expected, not because it held fewer items, but because I wasn't carrying hope inside it anymore. I left my keys on the counter, took one last look around the space we were supposed to turn into a shared future, and walked out without looking back. Some days are harder than others. There are moments when I miss the version of him I thought I was marrying. The man who talked about our future like it was something solid and exciting. The life I pictured, the wedding we planned in half sentences and shared jokes. Grief doesn't always come from what was lost. Sometimes it comes from what never really existed. But there's also relief, deep, quiet relief. Better to end an engagement than file for divorce. Better to face the truth before children, mortgages, and years of resentment get involved. The ring is still in my dresser drawer. I haven't worn any ring since. Maybe someday with someone else. Someone who doesn't need space from being chosen. Someone who is proud to say my name and mean it. His family still checks in occasionally. His mother sends messages. His sister asks how I'm doing. It's strange, staying connected to people who remind me of a life I almost lived, but they're good people, and they saw the truth when it mattered. As for him, I hope therapy helps. I hope he figures out why he needed attention more than commitment, options more than honesty. I don't wish him harm. I just no longer wish him a future with me in it. The night that table went quiet wasn't about a missing ring. It was about something much bigger. Everyone finally saw what I had been feeling for weeks, that something fundamental was missing. Not love, not history, certainty. And I've learned this. If someone asks you to hide your commitment, listen. If someone feels burdened by choosing you, believe them. And if someone needs space from being engaged, they are already stepping away from marriage. Walking away wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of self-respect. I didn't lose a fiancé. I gained clarity. And that, in the long run, is worth far more than any ring ever could be.